friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge, and I have to wonder, how astute are you? Well, you can be fully astute with this, the Spyderco ASTUTE. I know, that's kind of a lame introduction, isn't it? The ASTUTE is a 3-inch blade. Actually, this one's just a hair over 3 inches, but it's a 3-inch liner lock knife from Spyderco. People are just trying to tell me, but you can get a whole lot better knife for less money. Yeah, I know. You can get a whole lot better knives than this for the same amount of money. But that doesn't mean that people don't want this to be reviewed. They still want to know about this knife. And so I do these reviews to help the viewer know the knife, not to tell you to buy it. I sometimes say at the end if I recommend it or not, but that's not the main point. The main point for this video is to tell you about the knife, and then you decide if you want it or not. That's how it's supposed to work. That's what a review is supposed to be, and that's what a reviewer is supposed to do. So, without any further introduction, let's get to the tabletop and take a good close look at this knife. If you're just looking for one knife, the best budget knife out there, you're never going to find it, because there's always going to be contradictory opinions on which is the best knife. This knife is a pretty good knife. I'm very happy with it in its performance, how it cuts, those kind of things. But of course, there's some things I don't like about this knife. First thing let's do is do a size comparison with the, with the Ontario RAT 1. It's a smaller knife, quite a bit smaller. But you don't have much less cutting edge than the RAT 1. It's, I'm off the screen. So the tips are together right there. And, you know, 3/16 of an inch more cutting with this knife. So there's a lot of cutting edge on here. What do we have? We've got a drop point blade, nice big belly here, full flat grind. Of course, the spider hole there. There's Spyderco logo there. On the ricasso, it says 8CR13 MOV, which is a good budget steel. And by the way, it says Spyderco just on the bevel, just after the plunge right there. 8CR13 MOV is pretty good. It's a high carbon stainless steel, and it's got a decent amount of chromium for corrosion resistance. Keeps an edge fairly well, especially for the price. Well, for the price of most knives with 8CR13, that is. One other badge, it says China right there. Did you know which company makes Spyderco's made in China knives? Well, it's Sanrenmu. So here we've got another Sanrenmu knife. This used to be, just 5 years ago, 10 bucks, 10 American dollars for this knife. Well, maybe this one was probably 12 or 13 because of the special pattern. This is the Sanrenmu 7010, which I like an awful lot. And if you were to only want the best budget knife and you don't mind a smaller knife, I'd probably say the 7010 is it. It's a whole lot less money than this Spyderco ASTUTE. There's one thing I don't like about this blade, and Spyderco does it generally, no sharpener's choil. So when you're sharpening this knife, it is going to start to get ugly in this area after some time. But right now, you know, it looks nice sharpened like the way it is. I like that there's a quick plunge, so if I want to add a sharpener's choil, I can. It cuts quite well. It even pierces quite well. You do have a bit of a guard because you've got a thumb riser here. There's no jimping on it or anything, but there's a thumb riser there. There's a big cutaway here for the index finger, so you can get a fairly secure grip. The rest of the handle fits in the hand very well, so you can puncture into things. Certainly not something that's very strong and hard. If you come to an abrupt stop, your hand might go over that blade, and you don't want to do that. But in terms of the cutting performance of this blade shape and the grind, it's actually quite good. It's nice and thin behind the grind, and it's well made. It's sharpened quite a bit better than average. What do we got in the pivot? We've got a flat side here, so that tells me it's probably a D-shaped pivot pin. I will take it apart for you on camera. We've got a T6 screw here. I despise that. I really dislike that tremendously. The pivot pins, though, should never be a T6. Well, I don't think any of them should, but definitely not the pivot pin. The other screws, we've got flush body screws back here. We've got just standard open, like flat pins, no hourglass shape or anything. And those T6 screws have, well, let's take because there's some play between this and the driver. Hopefully I can show it on camera, the amount of play that there is inside that screw. So there's a fair bit of slop in that screw, plus you can't get the driver very deep with this flush screw. So definitely get some drive grip anti-cam out fluid when you're going to take this kind of knife apart. We've got a tube here for the lanyard. The placement for that lanyard tube is just terrible in my opinion, but where else are you going to put it? With this kind of pocket clip, can't put a lanyard through the hole on the pocket clip because, you know, the blade would come in right through there, so they couldn't do that. 4-way pocket clip holes milled into here, which Spyderco likes to do, so you can carry it any way you want. If you carry it tip down, you can carry it deeper in your pocket, so that's a good thing. The pivot, no blade play, side to side, up and down. There's a little bit of flex because the system's just not terribly strong, but it's not really blade play. A lockup solid up and down. Lock up here, it's exactly where I like it to be on a brand new knife. The blade's not very thick, so there's not an awful lot of room for it to wear over, but there is. Nice big cutaway for you to get your thumb in there to disengage that lock. I wish there was a chamfer on that edge there. And if I keep this knife, I think I would grind in a little bit of a chamfer there just to soften it up. It's not painful or anything, it's just a little irritating for there to be a 90-degree edge that you have to push on to disengage the lock. It's fairly ambidextrous, certainly with the pocket clips. Do you want to see how that pocket clip works? How well it performs? Well, in the original orientation from the factory, this is what you get. Right hand tip up, big spoon here, flat end goes in, and that's what you've got sticking out of your pocket. Almost an inch of knife handle sticking out of your pocket. With those button screws there, there's a lot of texture for you to be able to easily grab that knife and pull it out. So it's a decent pocket clip, but I don't really recommend the pocket clip. It's not that great. I wish they would have done like a wire clip system on this. That's all I have to say about that. I wish they would have done it differently, but it's not bad. It's not hot in the hand, and it's quite comfortable. I will demonstrate what it looks like with the pocket clip in the tip-down orientation. In the tip-down orientation, I've got it in left-hand mode right now. If you want to roll your thumb out from the top, that works just fine. When you've got the left-hand pocket clip on tip-down, it's a little bit harder to flick it out from underneath, but you can. How does it look in the pocket that way? A little bit better. Still has a fair bit of knife sticking out because it's not a deep carry pocket clip, but that's how it looks. Time to look at how the knife is constructed. You will notice, first off, it's a washer system. We got phosphor bronze washers in here. The liners are not skeletonized, and the screws, they've got this orange colored, well, some of them got blue. Pivot pins got blue, and the body screws have got blue Loctite, and the pocket clip screws have got this orange or rust kind of looking Loctite. You can see that little bit of grime build up and stuff from, I didn't use my nice oil on this. I just left the grease that was in there. Spyderco is using a light grease, and there's the washers, nice little thin washers. The liner on the lock side has got a D-shaped hole, and there's the D-shaped pin. So that stops the pin from spinning. I'm going to lubricate it with oil instead of grease, and I'll tell you if the action's any better with oil than it is with grease. The main thing to be careful with on this is that you don't over tighten the screws. Before I do the measurements and everything, a couple things that I forgot to tell you, or at least one, blade alignment is slightly off to the show side here just a little bit, not quite down the middle. It doesn't touch anywhere, but it's slightly off. And with the lubrication that I've got, the Gunny Glide lubrication, it's a little bit better. I still haven't broken it in, and phosphor bronze washers really do need a break-in period, but as you can clearly see, it's very flickable and it works just fine. Now let's go over all the measurements and those specs. The weight of this knife is 74 grams, 2.65 ounces. The sharpness from the factory, 130 bests, very close to average, just a little bit better than average not much. The cutting edge length, 76.6 millimeters, 3.01 inches. Blade length, tip to the closest spot on the handle is 77 millimeters, 3.03 inches. So unfortunately, if you live where there's 3-inch laws, you might want to sharpen the tip on this thing a few times to bring it back a bit. The thickness of the blade, 2.36 millimeters, which is 0.093 of an inch, so just under 1/10 of an inch. The blade depth, the widest point, is right about where my fingertips are, 22.9 millimeters, 0.09 of an inch. How thin is it behind the grind? Measured in 3 spots and averaged out 0.45 millimeters, 17.5 thousandths of an inch. That's good. The grind angles, this side's got an average of 19.8, this side's 17.5. This side started at 18.4, went to 16.7, 1.7 degrees of change along the length. This side started at 19.3, ended at 19.4, but was 20.8 in the middle. That's 1.5 degrees of change along the length of the blade. But overall, pretty good. I'd sharpen this knife. You know, this type of urban EDC carry with this steel, 18 degrees per side would be very good, I think, for this knife. The handle now, the handle length, 99.9 millimeters, 3.93 inches. The grip area, it's about 9 centimeters, about 3.5 inches. Plenty. I've handled a lot of knives that are like that. It just looks a little smaller than it really is. The thickness of the handle on the G10 slabs, not measured on any of the hardware or anything, just the slabs, 10.25 millimeters, 0.403 of an inch. The handle depth, the widest point is right about here, 25.8 millimeters, 1.02 inches. When the knife is closed, the widest point is up here, 30.4 millimeters, 1.2 inches. And the total length of this knife, 177 millimeters, 6.97 inches, so 7 inches. 3 inches, 4 inches, 7 inches. That's roughly what it is. What's the price on this knife? I didn't tell that yet. $51.80 at White Mountain Knives. Now, you can save 10% off with my coupon code CCE. That makes it $46.62 American. In Canadian, that's about 61 Canadian. What's my summary? What's my overall thoughts on this thing? I would have really liked a wire clip on here. They do a wire clip on, I don't have one handy right here, on some of their slip-it knives, also made in China at the same factory. By the Sanremu guys. I think it's too much money for what you get, but it's a Spyderco brand name, and the brand name itself demands some money. They got good warranties at Spyderco. So if you really like this blade shape and the handle, very comfortable handle. I'm very happy with this thing. This would be a really good urban EDC carry, like just an everyday carry if you're in the city. Very comfortable, not too in your face, and decent materials. It's quite nice. The pros, I don't mind 8CR13. It's good for a budget knife. Although at this price, I'd rather have it be, 14C28N or something. For a washer system, it's quite good. So I like that. The blade shape, it's a good blade shape. It cuts really well. It slices even better. And it punctures fairly well. So pretty good. The cons, I really dislike T6 screws. I just do. I don't think they're ever going to change it on this knife, but especially on the pivot pin, T6. Flush screws are even worse when they're T6, and these have some play in them, so they could have done better quality screws. If they insist on keeping them as T6, they need higher quality screws. Although these did not strip out, and this knife has now been taken apart at least twice since being made, so that's okay. The lanyard, yeah, not so fond of the placement of the lanyard. I wish there was some fine jimping up here. It would make it even more stab-worthy, if you will. It'd be safer to puncture with it if it had some jimping up here on this thumb riser right there. That would have been nice. And I like sharpness choils. I prefer sharpness choils, so there's none here. Overall, is it worth the price? For me as an individual, I'm not talking as a reviewer. For me as an individual, no, I wouldn't buy this knife. I buy it as a reviewer because people want to know about the knife. So I'm showing it. Thank Thank you to my supporters. You guys are awesome. Jim S. You haven't responded yet. You won a knife. Jim is one of my Patreon supporters. I give away a knife every month to one of my supporters. If you want to support the channel, you can go to patreon.com/CCE or click the join button right here below the video. If you're on a mobile device or on a computer, you can find that join button. If you're watching on TV, just go to patreon.com/CCE and you can support the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. All those good things do make a difference, and I appreciate it very much. And remember, always cut towards your chum, not your thumb.